Close your eyes for a moment. Think about who you were this morning when you woke up. Now, think about who you were a year ago, 5 years ago, when you were a child. Here's what might surprise you. The person listening to these words right now shares almost no physical matter with the person who went to sleep in your bed last night. Every cell in your body, except for a few in your brain and heart, has been completely replaced. Your thoughts have shifted. Your memories have been subtly rewritten. Even your personality has evolved in ways both obvious and invisible. So I have to ask you, are we the same person we were yesterday? Welcome to the One Question Podcast. I'm your host, and today we're diving into one of the most fundamental questions of human existence. It's a question that will make you reconsider everything you think you know about yourself, about continuity, about what it means to be human in a world where nothing stays the same. You know that feeling when you look at an old photo of yourself and think, was that me? There's something both familiar and foreign staring back at you. You recognize the face, but something deeper feels different. That moment of recognition mixed with disconnect isn't just nostalgia. It's your brain grappling with one of the deepest mysteries of consciousness. The ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus said, "You can't step into the same river twice because it's not the same river, and you're not the same person." But here's what he didn't say, and what modern science is just beginning to understand. You can't step into the same river once, because both you and the river are changing even as you step. Your body is replacing itself constantly. Right now, as you listen to this, millions of your cells are dying and being reborn. Your stomach lining replaces itself every few days. Your skin every few weeks. Your liver every few months. Even your bones, which feel so permanent, completely rebuild themselves every decade. You are, quite literally, a different physical being than you were yesterday. But the replacement goes deeper than flesh and bone. Your brain, the command center of your identity, is rewiring itself with every experience, every thought, every moment of attention. Neuroscientists call this neuroplasticity, but that clinical term doesn't capture the profound reality. Your brain is sculpting and resculpting itself every second you're alive. Think about the last time you learned something new, really learned it, not just memorized it. Maybe it was understanding why someone hurt you, or finally grasping a concept that had always confused you. In that moment of learning, your brain physically changed. New neural pathways formed, old ones strengthened or weakened. You became a different person than you were before that understanding clicked. This is biology. You are not the same person you were yesterday because you literally cannot be. But wait, if we're constantly changing, how do we maintain any sense of continuity? How do we wake up each morning knowing who we are? The answer lies in the most unreliable narrator you'll ever encounter, your memory. Here's something that might shake you. Every time you remember something, you're not accessing a perfect recording filed away in your mental archives. You're reconstructing that memory from fragments, and in the process of reconstruction, you're changing it. Each remembering is a rewriting. That childhood memory, you're certain, is exactly how things happened. It's been edited, enhanced, and modified countless times. Details from other experiences have crept in. Emotions from later events have colored earlier ones. Your current self has reached back and touched up the past to make it fit better with who you are today. This isn't a flaw in the system. It's a feature. Your brain isn't trying to be a perfect historian. It's trying to create a coherent story that helps you navigate the world. But this means the person you remember being yesterday isn't quite the person you were yesterday. and the person you remember being as a child bears only a passing resemblance to who you were then. You know that moment when someone tells a story about you and you realize they remember it completely differently than you do? You're both right, and you're both wrong. You're experiencing the fundamental unreliability of the self-narrator each of us carries around. Your identity isn't a fixed thing you possess. It's an ongoing story you tell yourself about who you are. And like all stories, it gets better with each telling, more polished, more coherent, and further from the messy reality it's trying to capture. So if we're physically different, mentally different, and our memories are unreliable, what exactly persists? What makes you you from one day to the next? Some philosophers argue it's the continuity of consciousness, the unbroken stream of awareness that flows from yesterday's thoughts to today's. But even this isn't as solid as it seems. Every night your consciousness disappears entirely during deep sleep. For hours, you simply don't exist in any meaningful way, yet you wake up convinced you're the same person who went to sleep. What about your personality? Surely that core of who you are remains constant. But decades of psychological research reveal that personality is far more fluid than we imagine. The traits that feel most essential to who you are, your level of openness, conscientiousness, and how extroverted you are, all of these shift over time, sometimes dramatically. You know how you cringe at things your younger self did? That's not just maturity talking. That's you recognizing that your values, your priorities, your entire way of seeing the world has fundamentally shifted. The person who made those choices you now regret was operating from a completely different framework of beliefs and desires. Here's what's fascinating. The changes happen so gradually that we rarely notice them in real time. It's like watching your hair grow, imperceptible day to day, obvious month to month. We maintain the illusion of consistency because we're always comparing today with yesterday, and yesterday's changes were also too small to notice. But step back far enough, and the transformation becomes undeniable. You are not the same person you were 10 years ago in any way that matters, yet somehow, impossibly, you are. Part of what creates our sense of continuous identity comes from outside ourselves, from the people who know us and reflect our sense of self back to us. You know how jarring it can be when someone you haven't seen in years treats you the same way they did decades ago? They're relating to a version of you that no longer exists, and suddenly you feel the weight of all the ways you've changed. But here's the twist. Those relationships also shape who we become. The way others see us influences how we see ourselves, which influences how we act, which changes who we are. Your identity isn't just your creation. It's a collaborative effort between you and everyone who's ever known you. Think about how differently you act around different people. With your family, you might find yourself slipping into old patterns, becoming a version of yourself you thought you'd outgrown. With new friends, you might discover aspects of your personality you never knew existed. Which version is the real you? The answer is all of them and none of them. We exist in relationship, and our sense of self shifts with our social context. The person you are when you're alone with your thoughts is different from the person you are in a crowded room, which is different from the person you are with your closest friend. These aren't masks or false selves. They're different facets of a complex, multi-dimensional identity that can't be reduced to a single, consistent self. This is why major life transitions can feel so disorienting. When you move to a new city, start a new job, or end a long relationship, you're not just changing your circumstances, you're losing the social mirrors that help define who you were. You have to rediscover yourself in this new context, and often you find that you're someone slightly different than you expected. If our bodies change, our memories shift, and our social contexts evolve, what holds it all together? What creates the experience of being a continuous self moving through time? The answer, it seems, is narrative. We are the stories we tell about ourselves, and those stories give shape and meaning to the chaos of constant change. But here's the thing about stories. They require both continuity and transformation. A story where nothing changes is boring. A story where everything changes randomly is incomprehensible. Your personal narrative threads together the changes and the consistencies, creating meaning from the apparent contradictions of identity. You tell yourself a story about growth, about lessons learned, about becoming who you were meant to be. This story isn't factually accurate. It can't be, given the limitations of memory and the complexity of human experience. But it's psychologically necessary. You know that moment when you suddenly understand something about your life. When you see a pattern you'd never noticed before or realize how one event led to another. That's your narrative-making brain at work, constantly weaving together the threads of experience into something that feels coherent and meaningful. But here's what's both beautiful and terrifying about this process. The story you tell about who you are doesn't just describe your identity, it shapes it. The way you understand your past influences your present choices, which creates your future. Your story about yourself becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. This is why the question of whether we're the same person we were yesterday matters so much. If we believe we're fundamentally unchangeable, we stop growing. If we believe we're completely different every day, we lose all sense of continuity and meaning. The truth, as usual, is more nuanced and more interesting than either extreme. From an evolutionary perspective, this constant change makes perfect sense. The organisms that survived were the ones that could adapt, that could become different versions of themselves as circumstances demanded. Rigid consistency would have been a death sentence in a changing world. But evolution also gave us the powerful illusion of continuity, because that illusion serves important functions. It allows us to make plans, to form lasting relationships, to learn from our mistakes. If we truly experienced ourselves as completely different people from moment to moment, we'd be paralyzed by uncertainty and unable to function in a social world. So we evolved to be both things at once, constantly changing beings with a persistent sense of self. We are ships of Theseus, replacing every plank while maintaining the identity of the vessel. We are rivers that feel like solid ground. This paradox isn't a bug in human consciousness. It's the feature that makes consciousness possible. We need to change to survive and grow, but we need to feel continuous to function and thrive. The tension between these needs creates the dynamic, complex experience of being human. Think about the last time you surprised yourself, when you acted in a way that seemed completely unlike you, or discovered you had capabilities you didn't know you possessed. That surprise came from encountering the part of yourself that's always changing, always becoming something new, bumping up against your narrative of who you think you are. Understanding that we're not the same person we were yesterday isn't just philosophical speculation. It has profound practical implications for how we live our lives. If you're constantly becoming someone new, then you're not trapped by who you've been. That mistake you made, that failure you experienced, that version of yourself you're embarrassed by, that person is already gone. Not forgotten, not erased, but transformed into someone with the wisdom of that experience. This doesn't mean consequences disappear or that accountability doesn't matter. It means that growth is always possible, that change is the fundamental nature of human existence, not an exception to it. You know that feeling when you're stuck in a pattern you hate, when you keep making the same mistakes or falling into the same traps? That's the illusion of a fixed self keeping you prisoner. The truth is more liberating. You are not condemned to repeat yourself. The person who made those choices yesterday is not exactly the person who has to make choices today. But this freedom comes with responsibility. If you're constantly becoming someone new, then you have a hand in shaping who you become. Your attention, your choices, your habits, your relationships, all of these are sculpting the person you're becoming, moment by moment. This is why mindfulness practices have been central to human cultures for thousands of years. They help us pay attention to the process of becoming, to notice how our thoughts and actions are shaping the person we're turning into. They make us conscious participants in our own evolution rather than passive victims of change. So, are we the same person we were yesterday? The answer is yes and no, and the tension between those answers is what makes us human. You are the same person in the sense that there's continuity of experience, narrative coherence, and persistent patterns. You are not the same person in the sense that everything about you, your body, your brain, your memories, your understanding, has changed in countless subtle ways. But here's the deeper question this raises. If we're constantly becoming someone new, who are we becoming? Are we growing into someone we're proud of, or are we changing in ways that diminish us? Are we conscious participants in our own evolution, or are we drifting without intention? The recognition that you're not the same person you were yesterday is not cause for anxiety. It's cause for hope. It means that tomorrow you can be someone slightly different than you are today. Not completely different, not unrecognizably changed, but evolved, grown, transformed in small but meaningful ways. Every choice you make, every thought you think, every relationship you nurture is casting a vote for the kind of person you're becoming. You are always in the process of creating yourself, always at the beginning of becoming who you might be. This is the profound responsibility and the profound freedom of human consciousness. We are not fixed beings moving through time, but time itself moving through beings, constantly creating new versions of ourselves with each passing moment. The question isn't whether you're the same person you were yesterday. The question is, who are you becoming today? The river of self flows on, carrying us forward into whoever we're becoming next. Thank you for joining me for this exploration of one of the deepest questions we can ask about what it means to be human. Next time on the One Question podcast, we'll explore another question that challenges everything we think we know about ourselves and our world. Until then, pay attention to the person you're becoming. They're listening.